Close your eyes and imagine something impossible. A world where one person commands the living and the dead. Where a single human being stands between chaos and cosmic order. Where death isn't an ending, but a doorway to eternity. This world existed for 3,000 years. And tonight, you're going to discover what it was really like. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where pharaohs lived as gods on earth. But here's what the history books don't tell you. Behind the golden masks and towering pyramids, these divine rulers lived lives that would shock you. Lives filled with darkness, obsession, and practices so disturbing they'll change how you see the ancient world forever. Before we begin this journey into the sands of time, I want you to get comfortable, really comfortable, because over the next while, I'm going to take you inside the palace walls, into the tomb chambers, behind the sacred rituals that defined an entire civilization. And by the end, you'll understand why the pharaohs still haunt our imagination thousands of years after their deaths. My name is your guide through the Sleepy Lore Library, and tonight's story is unlike anything you've heard before. This isn't just history. This is the disturbing truth about what it meant to be a god among mortals. The year is 1500 BCE. The place is Thebes, capital of the most powerful empire in the ancient world. The sun rises over limestone walls so white they hurt your eyes. Inside the palace, a living god is waking up. But don't imagine a peaceful morning, because from the moment a pharaoh opens his eyes until he closes them again, every single action carries the weight of the entire cosmos. One mistake and the world could end. Let me show you what that really meant. Picture yourself in the pharaoh's bedchamber. The air is thick with incense, myrrh and frankincense mixing with the scent of lotus oil. It's still dark outside, but servants are already moving through the shadows, barefoot, silent, terrified of waking the god-king too early or too late, because timing matters when you're maintaining cosmic order. The pharaoh sleeps on a bed raised high off the ground, not for comfort, but for protection. Evil spirits can't reach him there. Carved into the headrest are magical spells, words of power that guard his vulnerable sleeping mind from demons and curses. Even in rest, he's never truly safe. When he wakes, he doesn't just open his eyes. According to Egyptian belief, his awakening is synchronized with the sun god Ra's rebirth. The pharaoh and the sun rise together. If he oversleeps, the cosmic balance tips toward chaos. Can you imagine that pressure, knowing that your sleep schedule literally determines whether the sun will rise? Servants approach with bowls of sacred water from the Nile. Not just any water. This water has been blessed by priests, recited over with incantations, prepared to purify both body and spirit. The pharaoh must enter the day clean, ritually pure, or everything that follows is contaminated. They wash him carefully, methodically, his face first, then his hands, his feet. Every motion is choreographed, performed the same way every single morning, because deviation means chaos. Change invites disorder. The pharaoh's entire life is a performance of cosmic significance, and the script never changes. Next comes shaving. His entire body must be smooth, hairless, not for vanity, though the Egyptians valued cleanliness. Hair harbors lice, dirt, impurity. A divine being cannot be contaminated by such earthly concerns. So razors made of bronze glide across his scalp, his face, his chest. He emerges smooth as polished stone. Now the cosmetics And here's where it gets interesting. The pharaoh's makeup isn't decorative. It's armor. Black coal lines his eyes, made from ground galena and malachite. This isn't vanity. The desert sun is brutal, and the dark lines reduce glare. They also invoke the eye of Horus, offering magical protection against evil. Green malachite powder dusts his eyelids. Copper-based, toxic if ingested, but believed to carry the protective power of regeneration. The pharaoh's face becomes a canvas for magical symbols, each color carrying meaning, each application a ritual of transformation. Oils come next. Fragrant, expensive oils imported from across the known world. Cedar oil from Lebanon, cinnamon from distant lands. These aren't mere perfumes. In the Egyptian worldview, scent has power. The gods smell sweet. Decay smells foul. By anointing himself with precious oils, the pharaoh aligns himself with the divine and repels the forces of death and corruption. Now comes the dressing, layer upon layer of fine white linen. The Egyptians could weave linen so fine you could see through it, fabric softer than anything you've ever touched. The pharaoh wears multiple layers, each one whiter than snow, each one a barrier between his divine essence and the mortal world. The crook and flail cross his chest. The crook represents his role as shepherd of his people. The flail, his power to punish Egypt's enemies. These aren't just symbols. In the pharaoh's mind, in the minds of everyone who sees him, these objects channel actual divine power. They're weapons against chaos. Finally, the crown. But which crown? The pharaoh has several. The white crown of Upper Egypt, the red crown of Lower Egypt, or the double crown, the skint. Combining both, today he chooses the double crown, and it's placed on his head with reverence. The crown weighs nearly 5 pounds. Your neck would ache after an hour. The pharaoh will wear it all day. Through ceremonies, audiences, processions, because removing it means removing his authority, his divine power. The crown isn't clothing. It's part of who he is. Without it, he's not fully pharaoh. Dressed and crowned, the God King is ready to face his first duty, communion with the gods. He walks through corridors lined with painted columns, each one depicting his divine ancestors. They watch him pass, or so he believes. In the Egyptian worldview, images aren't representations. They're vessels for spiritual presence. The palace shrine is small, intimate. Only the pharaoh and the high priest can enter. Inside, statues of the gods wait in the flickering light of oil lamps. Ra, the sun god, Osiris, lord of the underworld, Horus, with whom the pharaoh is mystically identified. These aren't art, they're living vessels for divine presence. The pharaoh prostrates himself. This might shock you, a god bowing before other gods. But the Egyptian cosmic hierarchy is complex. The pharaoh is divine, yes, but he's not supreme. He's an intermediary, a bridge between human and divine realms. He serves the higher gods even as humans serve him. Offerings are made, bread, beer, wine, meat. The gods don't physically consume these things, of course, but their spiritual essence nourishes the divine realm. The pharaoh recites prayers in a language so ancient even he barely understands it. The words themselves carry power, syllables that have echoed through these halls for centuries. Incense burns. The smoke rises, carrying prayers to the heavens. The Pharaoh's eyes water from the thick, perfumed air. His knees ache against the stone floor, but he doesn't move, doesn't shift. This ritual must be performed perfectly, completely, every single morning. The stability of the universe depends on it. With his religious obligations fulfilled, the Pharaoh moves to the audience chamber. Here's where divine kingship meets political reality, because for all his godlike status, the Pharaoh still has to actually rule an empire, and empires require decisions, judgments, constant attention to detail. The throne room is magnificent. Walls covered in gold, leaf catch the morning sun, making the entire space glow. Painted hieroglyphs tell stories of the Pharaoh's victories, his divine birth, his cosmic significance. But the throne itself is what captures your attention. Solid gold, inlaid with lapis lazuli and turquoise. It's not furniture. It's a statement of absolute power. The Pharaoh sits, not casually, but with rigid formality, his back straight, his hands positioned precisely on the armrests. Even sitting is a ritual, a performance of divine authority. Courtiers file in, each one bowing so low their foreheads nearly touch the floor. Eye contact with the Pharaoh is forbidden. His gaze might accidentally curse you. The vizier approaches. Egypt's prime minister, second only to the Pharaoh himself. He carries papyrus scrolls, reports from across the kingdom, the Nile flood levels this year, grain harvest projections, border skirmishes with Nubian tribes, diplomatic gifts from Mesopotamian kings. The business of empire is endless, exhausting. But here's what makes this different from any modern government meeting. Every decision carries cosmic weight. The Pharaoh isn't just managing an economy or settling disputes. He's maintaining Ma'at, the divine order that prevents the universe from dissolving into chaos. A bad judgment doesn't just harm individuals. It threatens reality itself. So when a farmer petitions for relief from taxes because his crops failed, this isn't just about economics. It's about the Pharaoh's ability to maintain balance, to ensure prosperity flows through the land like the Nile flows through Egypt. Deny the petition, and you might seem strong. Grant it, and you might seem weak. The Pharaoh listens to each petition, each report, with a face like carved stone. He cannot show doubt, cannot reveal uncertainty. Divine beings don't hesitate. They know, so even when he's genuinely unsure, he must project absolute confidence. The mask can never slip. One case today troubles him. Two brothers dispute ownership of a field. Their father died without a clear will. Both brothers have witnesses. Both have compelling arguments. A human judge might split the difference, award half to each. But the Pharaoh is divine. His judgment must be perfect, must restore Ma'at. He closes his eyes. The court holds its breath. Is he communing with the gods, consulting divine wisdom? Or is he just a man, trying desperately to make the right call? We'll never know. The Pharaoh's inner life remains hidden behind layers of ritual and divinity. His eyes open. He speaks. His judgment is final, absolute, unappealable. The court accepts it because they must. Whether it's just, whether it's wise, doesn't matter in the same way it would for a human ruler. The Pharaoh has spoken. Ma'at is restored. The universe continues. Hour after hour, this continues. Disputes settled. trade agreements negotiated, building projects approved, the construction of a new temple, the repair of irrigation canals, the organization of a military expedition, every decision filtered through the lens of cosmic significance. By midday, the pharaoh is exhausted. You would be too, but he can't show it. Divine beings don't tire, they endure. So he sits ramrod straight, his face an unreadable mask, as petitioner after petitioner approaches his golden throne. Finally, a break, the pharaoh retires to his private chambers for the midday meal. But even eating for a pharaoh is never simple, never casual, because everything he consumes must be ritually pure, politically safe, and cosmically significant. Food tasters sample every dish before it reaches his lips. Poisoning is a constant threat. Royal succession in Egypt can be murderous. And a pharaoh has as many enemies in his own family as outside it. His brothers might covet the throne. His secondary wives might scheme for their sons. Trust is a luxury he cannot afford. The meal itself is extraordinary. Roasted duck, glazed with honey. Fresh bread still warm from the ovens. Figs, dates, pomegranates. Beer brewed from barley. Sweet and thick. Wine imported from distant vineyards. Cheeses, oils, pastries dripping with sweetness. The pharaoh could feed 50 people with what's prepared for him alone. But he eats sparingly. Moderation in all things. A bloated pharaoh is an undignified pharaoh. Plus, there's a practical consideration. That 5-pound crown is easier to wear on an empty stomach. Heavy meals make you sluggish, and the pharaoh's day is far from over. As he eats, musicians play soft, hypnotic melodies on harps and flutes. The music isn't entertainment exactly. It's atmosphere, creating the proper environment for the divine king's sustenance. Everything around him reinforces his exalted status. Every sight, every sound, every smell. But here, in the privacy of his chambers, does he ever just want to be human? Does he ever crave a simple meal? Alone, without the ceremony and the tasters and the cosmic significance? We don't know. The pharaoh's thoughts are his own. Locked behind that expressionless mask he must wear in public. After the meal, the pharaoh has a few hours for what might, in another life, be called leisure. But for him, even recreation serves a purpose. Today he chooses to hunt, not for food. The palace has food. He hunts to demonstrate his power, his vitality, his dominance over the forces of chaos. The royal hunting chariot is brought forth, gilded, decorated with scenes of previous hunts. It's more work of art than vehicle. The pharaoh climbs aboard, taking the reins himself. Behind him, his hunting party assembles, courtiers, guards, servants. They'll witness his prowess and spread word of it throughout the kingdom. They ride into the desert, beyond the green strip of the Nile Valley. Out here, the chaos is visible. Endless sand, hostile and empty. Lions prowl these wastes. Gazelles flee across the dunes. This is the realm of Seth, god of chaos and the desert. The pharaoh enters Seth's domain to prove his power over it. A lion is spotted. The hunting party halts at a distance. Only the pharaoh will approach. He draws his bow, a magnificent weapon of wood and horn, strung with sinew. The bow is powerful enough to pierce thick hide at 100 paces. But can he make the shot? The lion hasn't seen him yet. It's lounging in the shade of a rock. Massive and unconcerned, the pharaoh nocks an arrow, draws the string back. His muscles strain. The desert sun beats down. Sweat trickles down his neck beneath his crown. He aims, breathes, releases. The arrow flies. It's a perfect shot, striking the lion in its shoulder. The beast roars, wounded but not dead. Now comes the dangerous part. A wounded lion is unpredictable, lethal. The pharaoh draws another arrow, this time aiming for the kill. The second arrow finds its mark. The lion collapses, its roar fading to silence. The hunting party erupts in cheers, praising the pharaoh's skill, his courage, his divine favor. He has defeated chaos in physical form. Ma'at is reinforced. The universe remains balanced. But as the pharaoh looks at the fallen lion, does he feel triumph or something else? The lion was magnificent, powerful, beautiful. Now it's dead, killed to prove a point, for a moment, just a moment. Does the pharaoh wonder about the cost of his divinity? The moment passes. The lion is loaded onto a cart. Its skin will be tanned, its skull preserved. Another trophy for the palace. Another story for the scribes to record. Another proof that the pharaoh is everything he claims to be. Powerful, skilled, divinely favored. They return to the palace as afternoon fades toward evening. The pharaoh is dusty, sweaty, tired, but he can't rest yet. There's an evening banquet, a diplomatic necessity. Foreign envoys have arrived, bearing tribute and seeking favor. The pharaoh must receive them with appropriate ceremony. He bathes again, changes into fresh linen, reapplies his cosmetics. The transformation from hunter to host requires careful preparation. By the time he enters the banquet hall, no trace of the desert remains. He's once again the perfect divine king, flawless and untouchable. The banquet is spectacular, tables laden with food, drink flowing freely. Musicians and dancers perform, acrobats tumble and twist. The foreign envoys present their gifts: gold from Nubia, cedar from Lebanon, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. Each gift is received with regal dignity, each envoy with calculated courtesy. But beneath the festivities, politics churns. The pharaoh must read each envoy, gauge their kingdom's strength, assess threats and opportunities. Is the Hittite ambassador hinting at alliance or issuing a veiled threat? Is the Syrian prince's excessive flattery genuine or sarcastic? The pharaoh must navigate these waters perfectly. His great royal wife sits beside him, a partner in this diplomatic dance. She's more than a consort. She's often his sister or half-sister, chosen to keep the royal bloodline pure. Tonight she wears jewelry that would ransom a city: gold, carnelian, turquoise. She smiles at the envoys, her beauty legendary, her political acumen sharper than any blade. The banquet stretches into the night. Wine flows, tongues loosen. This is when real negotiations happen, when alliances form or break. The pharaoh drinks sparingly, staying alert while others indulge. He must remain in control, always in control. Finally, as torches burn low and guests stumble toward their quarters, the pharaoh can retire. But even in his bedchamber, surrounded by guards and magical protections, he doesn't immediately sleep. There's one more duty: communion with the divine in dreams. The Egyptians believed dreams were messages from the gods, glimpses of divine will. The pharaoh's dreams especially carried weight, so before sleeping, he recites prayers, burns incense, prepares his mind to receive whatever the gods wish to communicate. And then, finally, he closes his eyes. The day that began with the sunrise ends in darkness. Tomorrow he'll wake and do it all again. The same rituals, the same responsibilities, the same relentless performance of divinity, day after day, year after year, until death finally releases him. But here's what makes this even more complex. The pharaoh doesn't live alone in his palace. He's surrounded by family, and not just any family. A tangled web of wives, children, siblings, all vying for position and power. This is where palace politics gets truly disturbing. The pharaoh typically has many wives. His great royal wife holds the highest position, but secondary wives fill the harem. Some are diplomatic marriages, princesses sent by foreign kings to cement alliances. Others are noble women from powerful Egyptian families. Each brings her own ambitions, her own agenda. And then there are the children. A successful pharaoh might father dozens, even hundreds of children. Ramesses II claimed over 100. These aren't just family members, they're potential successors, each one a possible future pharaoh. And where succession is uncertain, murder follows. The great royal wife naturally wants her son to inherit the throne, but if that son is young, sickly, or unsuited to rule, secondary wives see opportunity. Their sons might be older, stronger, more capable. Why shouldn't they rule? The resulting power struggles could be vicious. Take the case of Ramesses III. In his old age, one of his secondary wives, Tiye, hatched a conspiracy. She wanted her son Pentor on the throne instead of the designated heir. The plot involved magic, poison, and assassination. It failed, but not before Ramesses III's throat was cut. He lived just long enough to order the conspirator's execution. The trial records are chilling. Dozens were implicated. Some were forced to commit suicide. Others were executed brutally. Pentor himself, though probably not directly involved, was killed and denied proper burial. His mummy, when found, showed a face frozen in a screen. Even in death, the horror remained, but palace intrigue wasn't limited to succession struggles. Sexual politics in the royal household created its own special hell. The pharaoh's harem could house dozens, even hundreds of women. They lived in luxurious quarters, pampered and imprisoned simultaneously. Their entire existence revolved around pleasing the pharaoh and bearing his children. Competition between wives was fierce. Ramesses II's great royal wife, Nefertari, and his secondary wife, Isetnofret, waged a decades-long Cold War. Nefertari was beloved, honored with magnificent temples, but she bore Ramesses several sons who all died young. Isetnofret's son survived. When Ramesses finally died after 66 years, it was Isetnofret's son who took the throne. The rivalry extended beyond life. Someone vandalized Nefertari's tomb, hacking her image from the walls. Was it Isetnofret's faction trying to erase their rival from history? We'll never know for certain. But the destruction speaks to how deep these hatreds ran. And then there's the incest. This is where Egyptian royal marriage gets truly disturbing to modern sensibilities. Pharaohs routinely married their sisters, even their daughters. The goal was to keep the royal bloodline pure, to concentrate divinity in the family. The theological justification came from the gods themselves. Osiris and Isis were brother and sister, husband and wife. If the gods could marry within the family, so could their earthly representatives. It wasn't considered wrong. It was considered necessary, even sacred. But the genetic consequences were real and devastating. King Tutankhamun, product of a brother-sister marriage, suffered from multiple congenital defects. He had a clubbed foot, a cleft palate, and probably Kola disease. A bone disorder. He walked with a cane and died at 19, possibly from infection after a leg break. DNA analysis of Tutankhamun and his family reveals generations of inbreeding. His parents were full siblings. His wife was probably his half-sister. The two daughters Tutankhamun's wife bore were both stillborn, their tiny mummified bodies buried with him. The royal bloodline, kept so carefully pure, had become poisoned. The Ptolemaic dynasty, ruling Egypt centuries later, took incest to even greater extremes. Brother-sister marriages weren't occasional. They were the rule. Cleopatra VII, the famous queen, was the product of at least 3 generations of sibling marriages. Her family tree doesn't branch. It's nearly a straight line. The psychological impact of growing up in such an environment is hard to fathom. Imagine knowing your mother is also your aunt. Your brother is your husband. Your children are products of incest, likely to be sick or deformed. How do you maintain sanity in that reality? Perhaps this explains some of the stranger behaviors of certain pharaohs. Akhenaten, for instance, with his bizarre religious reforms and unusual artistic style, modern scholars debate whether he suffered from a genetic disorder. Perhaps Marfan syndrome or Froelich syndrome. His elongated skull, feminine hips, and unusual features might be genetic rather than artistic choice. Or perhaps the pressure of divine kingship itself drove pharaohs to extremes. When you're told from birth that you're a god, that cosmic order depends on you, that your slightest action carries universe-shaking importance. How do you stay grounded in reality? Some pharaohs handled it well. They ruled justly, built magnificently, left Egypt stronger than they found it. Others cracked under the pressure, becoming tyrants or madmen. And some, like Akhenaten, tried to remake the entire world to match their vision. Damn the consequences. But whether sane or mad, successful or disastrous, all pharaohs shared one absolute obsession: death. Or more precisely, what came after death. Because for all their power on earth, the pharaohs knew they were mortal, and confronting mortality when you're supposedly divine creates unique psychological pressures. The Egyptian concept of the afterlife was complex and detailed. Death wasn't the end. It was a transformation, a journey to a paradise called the Field of Reeds. There, the deceased would live forever in perfect happiness, farming eternal crops, enjoying eternal pleasures, never aging, never suffering. But reaching the field of reeds required preparation. Extensive, expensive, obsessive preparation. Your body had to be preserved. Your tomb had to be equipped. You needed to pass tests, avoid dangers, speak the right magical words, fail any step, and you faced annihilation. Your soul devoured by monsters. For ordinary Egyptians, this was stressful enough. For pharaohs, it became all-consuming. From the moment they took the throne, they began preparing for death. Tomb construction started immediately. The greatest architects, the finest craftsmen, all dedicated to creating the pharaoh's eternal home. Consider Khufu's Great Pyramid. Construction probably began within years of his coronation. It took over 20 years to build, employed tens of thousands of workers, required millions of limestone blocks, each weighing tons. The logistics are staggering. The cost, unimaginable, all for one man's tomb, all to house one mummy, one spirit on its journey to eternity. The pyramid wasn't just architecture. It was a machine designed to launch the pharaoh's soul into the heavens, to transform him from earthly king to celestial god. Inside the pyramid, the king's chamber waited, a perfect rectangle of granite blocks fitted so precisely you can't slip a knife between them. Here, the pharaoh's mummy would rest in a granite sarcophagus, surrounded by magical spells carved into the walls. The pyramid texts, humanity's oldest religious writings, covering every surface with protective incantations. But the pyramid was just the beginning. The pharaoh also needed a mortuary temple, a place where priests would perform daily rituals to sustain his spirit. These temples were staffed by hundreds of priests, funded by vast estates. The pharaoh's death cult might employ more people than the government of a modern town. And then there were the grave goods. Everything the pharaoh might need in the afterlife had to be buried with him. Furniture, clothing, weapons, jewelry, food, wine. The tomb of Tutankhamun, a minor pharaoh who died young, contained over 5,000 objects. Imagine what Ramesses II's tomb must have held. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. In the earliest dynasties, pharaohs didn't just take objects to the afterlife. They took people, servants, guards, courtiers, even pets, all killed to accompany their master into death. The tomb of King Jer at Abydos contained 318 subsidiary burials. 318 people sacrificed when the pharaoh died. They were arranged in neat rows around his burial chamber, each in their own grave, each sent to serve him eternally. Think about that. 318 individuals, each with their own life, dreams, fears, all snuffed out because one man died. Some may have volunteered, believing it an honor. Others were probably forced. Either way, the death toll is staggering. Archaeological evidence suggests many were strangled or struck on the head. Quick deaths. At least, their bodies were wrapped in linen and buried with simple grave goods. No elaborate mummification for servants. That privilege belonged to the pharaoh alone. Even animals weren't spared. Pharaohs were buried with their hunting dogs, their pet cats, even their favorite donkeys. One tomb contained 12 baboons, sacred to Thoth, god of wisdom. These animals were mummified like humans, wrapped carefully, treated with reverence. They'd serve their master in paradise. Perhaps the strangest grave goods were the hair. Tons of human hair, wigs made from the locks of young girls and women. 30 million animal mummies and 80 tons of human hair were found beneath the temple of Anubis at Saqqara. The hair was an offering to Anubis, jackal-headed god of embalming. A plea for the pharaoh's safe passage. Where did all this hair come from? Did women donate it willingly? Or was it shorn from sacrificial victims? We don't know. The practice is so alien to us, so disturbing, that we struggle to understand the mindset behind it. Thankfully, by the Middle Kingdom, human sacrifice had mostly ended. The Egyptians developed symbolic substitutes, shaptis, small figurines inscribed with magical spells. The belief was that these figurines would magically come to life in the afterlife, becoming servants. One tomb might contain hundreds of shaptis, a clay workforce for eternity. But even without human sacrifice, the pharaoh's burial remained an elaborate, expensive, obsessive affair. The mummification process alone took 70 days, required specialized priests, and followed precise rituals. Get one step wrong, and the mummy might not survive. The spirit might not reach paradise. The process began with purification. The body was washed in water from the Nile, sacred and life-giving. Then came evisceration. The embalmers made an incision in the left side and removed the internal organs. Lungs, liver, stomach, intestines, all were removed, separately mummified, and placed in canopic jars. The heart remained in the body. The Egyptians believed the heart was the seat of intelligence and emotion. In the afterlife, the heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth. A heart heavy with sin would fail the test, and the deceased would be devoured by Amit, a monster part crocodile, part lion, part hippo. The brain was removed through the nose, pulled out with hooks, and discarded. The Egyptians didn't understand the brain's function. They thought you thought with your heart. So the brain was considered useless, waste, to be thrown away. Once eviscerated, the body was packed in natron, a type of salt that absorbed moisture. It sat in natron for 40 days, drying out completely. This is what prevented decay. Without moisture, bacteria can't grow. The body becomes preserved, mummified. After 40 days, the natron was removed. The body was now dried, leathery, preserved. It was washed again, then coated with resin to seal it. Finally came the wrapping, layer upon layer of linen bandages, hundreds of meters of fabric, each layer blessed with prayers and amulets. Between the layers, priests placed protective amulets, the eye of Horus for protection, the scarab beetle for regeneration, the dage pillar for stability. Each amulet carried magical power, contributing to the mummy's defense against supernatural threats. The wrapping process could take weeks. Priests recited spells continuously, imbuing each layer with magical protection. The final layer was often a shroud, painted with the deceased's face. Then came the mask for pharaohs. This was solid gold, inlaid with precious stones. Tutankhamun's mask alone weighs over 20 pounds of pure gold. The finished mummy was placed in a coffin. Actually, multiple nested coffins. Tutankhamun had 3, 2 of gilded wood, 1 of solid gold. Each coffin was decorated with protective symbols and spells from the Book of the Dead, a collection of magical texts guiding the deceased through the afterlife's dangers. Finally, the mummy was ready for burial. The funeral procession was a spectacle. Priests chanting, professional mourners wailing, bearers carrying the coffin to the tomb. At the tomb entrance, the opening of the mouth ceremony was performed, magically restoring the mummy's senses so it could eat, breathe, and live in the afterlife. Then the mummy was sealed in the tomb, surrounded by everything it needed. And here's what's fascinating. The Egyptians believed this actually worked. They believed the pharaoh really did continue living, really did reach paradise, really did become divine. Modern skeptics might dismiss it as superstition, but to the Egyptians, death and afterlife were as real as birth and life. They had an entire theology worked out, explaining every step. They'd been refining it for thousands of years. To them, mummification wasn't desperate hope. It was science. And in a way, it worked. Tutankhamun died over 3,000 years ago. His mummy still exists. We can see his face, study his bones, analyze his DNA. He achieved a kind of immortality, though probably not the kind he imagined. But tombs weren't just storage for mummies. They were temples, palaces for the dead. Painted walls showed the deceased in paradise, enjoying eternal pleasures. Hieroglyphic spells covered every surface, magical protection against tomb robbers and evil spirits. Some tombs were enormous. Ramesses II's tomb in the Valley of the Kings has over 100 chambers. Corridors descend hundreds of feet into bedrock. Room after room filled with treasures, furniture, statues. It's not a tomb, it's an underground palace. The Valley of the Kings itself is an eerie place. A desolate canyon in the desert, honeycombed with tombs. Pharaohs of the New Kingdom abandoned pyramids, which advertised wealth and attracted thieves. Instead, they carved tombs into hidden cliff faces, hoping secrecy would protect them. It didn't work. Almost every tomb was robbed, most within centuries of burial. The thieves were often the very priests and guards supposed to protect the tombs. They knew the layouts, had access, and were tempted by unimaginable wealth. A single golden armband could feed a family for years. When tomb robbers were caught, punishment was brutal. They might be impaled on stakes, left to die slowly as warning to others. But the temptation was too great. The tombs held fortunes, and the pharaohs were dead. Why should they keep such wealth while the living starved? So the tombs were plundered. Mummies were torn apart searching for amulets. Coffins were smashed, furniture broken, paintings defaced. The pharaohs' eternal homes became scenes of desecration and chaos, the opposite of everything they were meant to be. Eventually, priests gave up trying to protect individual tombs. They gathered royal mummies from their ransacked tombs and hid them together in secret caches. Better to preserve the bodies than lose them entirely to thieves and vandals. These caches, when discovered in the 1800s, were astonishing. Dozens of pharaohs, some of history's most powerful rulers, stashed together like forgotten lumber. Ramesses II, Seti I, Thutmose III, kings who'd commanded empires, now jumbled together in a hidden cave. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 was special precisely because it was mostly intact. Howard Carter's first glimpse into that tomb after 3,000 years of darkness must have been overwhelming. "Can you see anything?" his patron asked. "Yes," Carter replied. "Wonderful things." And there were wonderful things. A golden throne, gilded chariots, alabaster vessels, jewelry beyond description. The famous golden mask, all crammed into a small tomb because Tutankhamun died young and unexpectedly. Imagine what wealthier pharaohs had taken to their graves. But Tutankhamun's tomb had been entered twice in antiquity. Robbers got in, stole some items, were apparently interrupted. Priests resealed the tomb, and it was forgotten. If not for that lucky accident of history, we'd have nothing. The tomb would be as empty as all the others. This raises a disturbing question. We admire Egyptian tombs for their beauty and treasure, but they represented massive misallocation of resources, thousands of workers, years of labor, fortunes in gold and jewels, all buried underground, serving no one, benefiting nothing. From a modern perspective, it seems wasteful. That gold could have fed the poor. Those workers could have built infrastructure. The obsession with death and afterlife diverted resources from the living to serve the dead. But the Egyptians didn't see it that way. To them, the afterlife was more important than life. This world was temporary, imperfect. The next world was eternal, perfect. Investing in eternity made sense. Spending resources on temporary earthly needs was the real waste. This worldview shaped their entire civilization. Architecture focused on tombs and temples, built to last forever, while homes and palaces were built from mud brick, meant to be temporary. Most of what we see from ancient Egypt is their death cult. The life, the daily existence, has mostly vanished. It's a reminder that civilizations can be fundamentally alien to us, can operate on assumptions we don't share. The Egyptians weren't stupid or primitive. They were sophisticated, intelligent, capable. They just believed different things, prioritized differently, and their beliefs created one of history's most fascinating cultures. A civilization obsessed with death that paradoxically celebrated life. Their tomb paintings don't show suffering or darkness. They show feasting, hunting, dancing. The afterlife was imagined as the best parts of life. Eternally extended in a harsh environment where the desert was always encroaching, where the Nile's flood could fail and bring famine, where death was everywhere. This was probably comforting. Yes, life is hard. Yes, you'll die. But afterward, paradise awaits, eternal happiness. Everything you suffered will be worth it. But not everyone got to paradise. The afterlife, for most Egyptians, was uncertain. Pharaohs had automatic divine status, their place among the gods guaranteed. Nobles who could afford proper burial and magical texts had good chances. But the poor, buried in simple graves with few goods, their fate was less certain. This created a society stratified even in death. The pharaoh in his pyramid, nobles in their decorated tombs, commoners in simple pits, everyone knew their place. In life and death, social mobility was limited. Your status was largely determined at birth. The pharaoh stood at the top of this hierarchy, unreachable, godlike. His life was completely unlike anyone else's. From birth to death, every moment was shaped by his divine status. He never experienced normal human existence, never knew privacy, freedom, casual relationships. Everything around him reinforced his uniqueness. The palace architecture, designed to awe and intimidate. The elaborate ceremonies, demonstrating cosmic significance. The artwork, showing him as larger than life, defeating enemies, communing with gods. The pharaoh lived in a bubble of divinity, isolated from normal human experience. Did this warp their psychology? Almost certainly. How could it not? Growing up told you're divine, that you're responsible for cosmic order, that everyone around you exists to serve you. That would affect anyone's development. Some pharaohs seem to have handled it well. They ruled justly, showed concern for their people, built useful infrastructure. They accepted their role's responsibilities along with its privileges. Thutmose III, Hatshepsut, Ramesses II, at his best, capable rulers who used their power constructively. Others, not so much. Akhenaten's religious revolution disrupted Egypt's entire social order. He moved the capital, outlawed traditional gods, imposed his personal vision on millions. His son Tutankhamun inherited a mess, dying young, trying to fix his father's mistakes. Or consider the pharaohs who became obsessed with building, commissioning ever larger monuments to themselves. The pyramids were impressive, yes, but they also represented hundreds of thousands of work hours, resources that could have been used elsewhere. Was the glory worth the cost? And then there's the darker side. The pharaohs who used their power brutally, who executed rivals on flimsy pretexts, who launched wars of conquest for prestige rather than necessity. Absolute power, as the saying goes, corrupts absolutely. But here's what's interesting. Egyptians seem to accept this. They didn't rebel against divine kingship. They embraced it for 3,000 years through good pharaohs and bad. The system persisted. Why? Partly fear. Certainly, opposing a god-king is terrifying. But partly genuine belief. The Egyptians really did believe in Ma'at. In cosmic order, they believed the pharaoh was necessary, that without him, chaos would consume everything. Better a flawed divine king than no divine king at all. This belief was reinforced constantly. Temple rituals, public ceremonies, artwork, architecture, everything proclaimed the pharaoh's divine nature and essential role. From childhood, Egyptians were immersed in this worldview. Questioning it was literally unthinkable for most people. Only in periods of chaos, when pharaohs were weak or absent, did the system crack. The first and second intermediate periods saw Egypt fracture. Multiple rulers claiming the throne, these were remembered as terrible times, when Ma'at failed and chaos reigned. The lesson seemed clear. Divine kingship worked. Without it, disaster followed. So Egyptians clung to the system, even when individual pharaohs disappointed. The institution mattered more than the individual. This is part of why Egyptian civilization lasted so long. 3,000 years is an astonishing span. Most civilizations rise and fall in centuries. Egypt endured millennia. Continuity, tradition, resistance to change. These were strengths and weaknesses simultaneously. Strengths because stability prevented the chaos that destroyed other civilizations. Weaknesses because rigidity prevented adaptation when circumstances changed. When Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, the pharaonic system had already been declining for centuries, unable to evolve. But even in decline, even conquered by Greeks, then Romans, Egypt retained its identity. The Ptolemies, Greek rulers, adopted pharaonic titles and practices. Cleopatra, a Greek, presented herself as an Egyptian pharaoh. The system had such power that conquerors felt compelled to work within it. Only Christianity finally broke the pharaoh's hold. When Egypt converted to Christianity, then Islam, the old gods and old ways faded. The last hieroglyphs were carved in 394 CE. After that, the knowledge was lost. For over 1,000 years, no one could read ancient Egyptian writing. The pharaohs became mysterious, their civilization enigmatic. Medieval Europeans saw the pyramids and had no idea who built them or why. Fantastic theories arose. Giants, aliens, anything but the truth that humans, organized and determined, could achieve the seemingly impossible. It wasn't until the 1800s that Egyptian civilization began revealing its secrets again. The Rosetta Stone provided the key to reading hieroglyphs. Suddenly, the pharaohs could speak again. Their inscriptions, prayers, boasts, all became readable, and archaeology started uncovering their world. The tombs, temples, cities, each discovery added pieces to the puzzle. We learned about their daily lives, their beliefs, their achievements and failures. The pharaohs stopped being mysterious god-kings and became understandable humans. Well, somewhat understandable. There's still much we don't know. The ancient Egyptians left no personal diaries, no introspective literature. We have official inscriptions, religious texts, administrative records, but the pharaohs' private thoughts, their personal struggles, remain hidden. When we look at a statue of Ramesses II, we see his face but not his mind. When we read his boasts about military victories, we don't know if he believed them or was just performing expected propaganda. The man behind the crown remains elusive. This is both frustrating and fascinating. The mystery draws us in. We want to understand these people who were so like us, yet so different, who built civilization while believing things we find bizarre, who achieved wonders while maintaining practices we find disturbing. And perhaps that's the real legacy of the pharaohs. Not the pyramids or the treasures, impressive as those are, but the reminder that human beings are capable of extraordinary things, for good and ill, that we can build civilizations lasting millennia, create art that endures forever, develop complex belief systems that shape entire societies. The pharaohs were human, flawed, mortal, prone to the same weaknesses we all face, but they were also part of something larger, a civilization that left its mark on history. Their achievements inspire us, their mistakes warn us, their beliefs challenge us to understand worldviews different from our own. When you visit Egypt today, the pharaohs are everywhere. Their temples still standing after thousands of years, their statues gazing across eternity, their mummies in museums, faces preserved, eyes closed. They achieved their goal of immortality, though not quite as they imagined. They wanted to live forever in paradise. Instead, they live forever in our memory, our museums, our imaginations. Every year, millions of people visit Egypt to see their monuments, to marvel at their achievements. The pharaohs are more famous now than they ever were in life. Tutankhamun, a minor king who died young, is now one of history's most recognizable figures. His golden mask has become iconic, symbolizing ancient Egypt to the entire world, all because his tomb survived, giving us a glimpse of pharaonic splendor. What would Tutankhamun think if he could see his mask in a museum, gazed at by thousands daily? Would he be pleased, seeing his immortality assured or disturbed, seeing his sacred burial disturbed, his body on display? We can't know, but we can appreciate the gift the pharaohs unknowingly gave us, a window into a fascinating past, a chance to understand a civilization that was, in many ways, the foundation of our own Egyptian ideas about writing, mathematics, medicine, architecture, all influenced later civilizations. The Greeks learned from Egypt. The Romans conquered Egypt, but also absorbed its culture. European Renaissance scholars rediscovered Egyptian wisdom. The Enlightenment fascination with Egypt helped birth modern archaeology. Even today, Egyptian symbols and motifs permeate popular culture, all because a civilization believed their kings were gods, believed death was a doorway, believed the effort and expense of preserving the past was worthwhile. They were right, though not in the way they thought. The past they preserved wasn't theirs in the afterlife. It's ours in the present. And there's something poignant about that. The pharaohs built for eternity, believing they'd personally enjoy it. Instead, we enjoy it, learn from it, draw inspiration from it. Their immortality serves us, not them. Would they consider that success or failure? Perhaps both. They wanted to be remembered. And they wanted their achievements to endure. And they have the fact that we remember them differently than they expected, appreciate them for different reasons than they hoped, doesn't diminish their success. In the end, the pharaohs were humans trying to transcend humanity, to become gods, to cheat death, to last forever. They failed, because we all fail. Death claims everyone, pharaohs and peasants alike. But in their striving, they created something beautiful, terrible, and enduring. Let me tell you about one final pharaoh, one whose story encapsulates everything we've discussed. Hatshepsut was a woman who became king, not queen, king. She wore the false beard, adopted male titles, had herself depicted as a man in official artwork. She ruled Egypt for over 20 years, one of the most successful pharaohs in history. Hatshepsut came to power as regent for her young stepson, Thutmose III, but she didn't step down when he came of age. Instead, she declared herself pharaoh, co-ruler with Thutmose. This was unprecedented. Egyptian kingship was masculine. The pharaoh was the embodiment of Horus, a male god, but Hatshepsut didn't care about precedent. She believed she had divine right to rule. She claimed her father, Thutmose, had designated her as his successor. She even created a myth that the god Amun himself had fathered her, making her fully divine. And she proved herself worthy. Her reign was peaceful and prosperous. She launched trading expeditions to distant lands, bringing back exotic goods. She commissioned magnificent buildings, including her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, one of Egypt's architectural masterpieces. Yet after her death, someone tried to erase her from history. Her images were chiseled from monuments, her name was removed from king lists. Statues of her were smashed. For a long time, scholars thought Thutmose III did this, angry at his stepmother for usurping his throne. But recent research suggests the erasure happened later, perhaps by Thutmose's successor. The motive might not have been personal spite, but theological necessity. A female pharaoh was an anomaly, a disruption of Ma'at. Later pharaohs might have feared that remembering Hatshepsut would encourage other women to claim the throne. Whatever the reason, the attempt to erase Hatshepsut failed. Enough evidence survived that we can reconstruct her reign, appreciate her achievements, marvel at her audacity. She wanted immortality as a great pharaoh, and despite efforts to deny her that, she achieved it. Hatshepsut's story shows both the system's rigidity and the possibility of individual agency within it. The pharaonic system was conservative, traditional, resistant to change, yet individuals could still push boundaries, achieve remarkable things, leave their mark. This tension between system and individual runs through all Egyptian history. The system provided stability, continuity, shared identity, but individuals provided innovation, achievement, memorable moments. Neither alone would have created the civilization we remember. Think about it. Without the system, without divine kingship and cosmic order and eternal continuity, Egyptian civilization would have been chaos, constantly reinventing itself, leaving little lasting legacy. But without exceptional individuals, without the Khufus and Hatshepsuts and Ramesseses, that continuity would have been sterile, unchanging, forgettable. The interplay between system and individual, between tradition and innovation, between divine kingship and human personality. That's what made Egyptian civilization so rich, so complex, so endlessly fascinating. And the pharaohs embodied this tension. They were individuals with unique personalities, strengths, weaknesses, but they were also office holders, playing a role, performing divinity, maintaining tradition, the pharaoh as person versus the pharaoh as institution. Sometimes the person dominated. Akhenaten imposed his personal religious vision on all Egypt. Sometimes the institution dominated. Tutankhamun, a child pharaoh, was probably controlled by advisors who used his name to restore traditional religion. Most pharaohs lived somewhere between, balancing personal desires with institutional requirements. They had some freedom, but within strict limits. They could choose which wars to fight, which buildings to commission, which advisors to trust, but they couldn't abandon divine kingship, couldn't refuse ritual obligations, couldn't escape their role. This must have been psychologically challenging. Imagine never being able to just be yourself, always performing, always aware that you represent something larger, always concerned about maintaining cosmic order. The pharaoh couldn't have a bad day without fearing the universe might notice. Some must have resented it, the burden of divinity, the isolation of the throne. Others probably embraced it, found meaning in the role, genuine purpose in their cosmic responsibilities. We can't know what any individual pharaoh truly felt. They left no confessions, no private letters revealing their souls. What we have are their public faces, carved in stone, painted on walls, recorded in hieroglyphs. We see what they wanted us to see. The real person underneath, the fears and hopes and dreams, those remain hidden, perhaps forever. This is true of most history. Of course, we see public actions, official records. Private thoughts and feelings are lost. But with the pharaohs, it's especially frustrating because they're so visually present, yet psychologically absent. We can look at Ramses II's face, his mummy preserved after 3,000 years. We can see his features, his white hair, his strong jaw, but we can't see his thoughts. We can't know what it felt like to be him, to carry his burdens, to experience his triumphs and tragedies. Did he love his wife Nefertari? The monuments suggest yes. But monuments lie for political purposes. Was he devastated when his sons died young? One after another? Probably. But he couldn't show weakness. Did he fear death? Despite his power and his preparations? We'll never know. This unknowability is part of the fascination. The pharaohs are famous, visible, documented, yet they remain mysterious. Their inner lives opaque. We project onto them. Imagine their thoughts. Create narratives to fill the silence. But these are our stories about them, not their stories about themselves. Perhaps that's fitting. The pharaohs worked so hard to control their image, to present themselves as divine and perfect. They succeeded so well that the real humans disappeared behind the divine masks. We remember the pharaohs they wanted us to remember. Powerful, eternal, God-like. The flawed humans who wore the crowns, who sweated and bled and died like everyone else. Those are lost to us, which is sad. In a way, we've lost the chance to know them as people. But it's also what they wanted. They didn't want to be remembered as humans. They wanted to be remembered as gods. And we do remember them that way. When people think ancient Egypt, they think of pharaohs as god-kings, not as struggling humans. The propaganda worked across 3,000 years. The pharaohs shaped their own legacy, controlled their image, even beyond death. That's an achievement in itself. How many of us will have any say in how we're remembered? Our legacies will be shaped by others, by historians and biographers who interpret our lives through their own lenses. The pharaohs managed to control that interpretation to ensure they'd be remembered on their own terms. Of course, they didn't anticipate modern archaeology and science. They didn't know we'd unwrap their mummies, analyze their DNA, CT scan their bodies, reconstruct their diseases and deformities. They didn't plan for the intimate invasions of modern research. If the pharaohs could see what we've done, examining their preserved bodies, displaying them in museums, would they be horrified? Their mummies were supposed to rest eternally in sealed tombs, not be poked and prodded by scientists, gazed at by tourists. But then again, they wanted to be remembered. They built monuments to their glory, recorded their deeds, preserved their bodies. On some level, they must have hoped future generations would marvel at them. They got their wish, though not quite as they imagined. This is the final irony of the pharaohs' quest for immortality. They wanted to live forever in paradise, as gods among gods. Instead, they've achieved a different immortality as objects of study, symbols of an ancient civilization, tourist attractions. Is that better or worse than oblivion? At least they're remembered. At least their civilization lives on in our memory. Their achievements recognized. Many great people are completely forgotten. The pharaohs aren't. That has to count as success. And in a deeper sense, Maybe they did achieve what they wanted. They believed in Ma'at, in cosmic order, in the importance of continuity and tradition. Egyptian civilization embodied those values for 3,000 years. It was an incredible achievement, a testament to what humans can create when they commit to shared beliefs and common purpose. The pharaohs were central to that achievement. Whatever their personal flaws, whatever disturbing practices they engaged in, they helped create and sustain one of history's greatest civilizations. That's their real legacy. Not the gold or the monuments, impressive as those are. The real legacy is the example of what human civilization can be. Organized, sophisticated, artistic, innovative, capable of incredible achievements. The pyramids are impressive, not because they're big, but because they prove what humans can do when we work together toward a common goal. And that goal was mad. In a way, building a mountain of stone to house one mummy. It's absurd, impractical, wasteful, but it's also glorious, audacious, human in its ambition. The pharaohs dreamed of eternity and chased that dream with everything they had. We mock the dream now. We know they failed, that there's no paradise, no eternal life, no escape from mortality. But the attempt was magnificent. The pharaohs looked at death and said, "No, I refuse. I will build my way to immortality." And then they built wonders that have lasted millennia. That defiance of death, that refusal to accept limitations, that's deeply human. We all die, but we all dream of immortality in some form. Children, works of art, great deeds, we want to leave something behind to matter, to be remembered. The pharaohs did this on a scale that's hard to comprehend. They literally reshaped the landscape, creating monuments that have outlasted empires. They developed systems of belief that influenced civilization for thousands of years. They left a mark on history that will never be erased. Was it worth it, the cost in human labor? Resources? Lives? That's a question each person must answer for themselves. From one perspective, the pharaohs were tyrants who exploited their people for personal glory. From another, they were leaders who united people in common purpose, creating wonders that inspired generations. Probably the truth is somewhere between. They were humans with all humanity's complexity, capable of cruelty and compassion, selfishness and sacrifice, wisdom and folly. They weren't monsters or gods. They were people trying to navigate impossible circumstances, playing impossible roles, and they did it for 3,000 years, dynasty after dynasty, pharaoh after pharaoh, maintaining a civilization through wars and famines, invasions and plagues, good times and bad. That's remarkable. Most civilizations don't last 1,000 years. Egypt lasted 3 times that. What kept it going? Partly geography. The Nile provided water and transportation. The deserts provided protection. But plenty of civilizations had good geography and still failed. Egypt succeeded because of its people, its culture, its systems. And at the center of those systems stood the pharaohs. They weren't the only important people. Of course, scribes, priests, craftsmen, farmers, all contributed to Egyptian civilization. But the pharaohs provided continuity, identity, purpose. They were the embodiment of Egypt. the living symbol of the nation. When a pharaoh died, Egypt didn't fall apart because another pharaoh immediately took his place. The system was larger than any individual. That's brilliant when you think about it. A system that could outlast its leaders, that could survive individual incompetence or chaos, that kept going through everything. Compare that to civilizations that collapsed when their great leaders died. Alexander the Great's empire fractured immediately after his death. The Mongol Empire did the same after Genghis Khan. But Egypt kept going, pharaoh after pharaoh, because the system worked. The divine kingship model provided stability. It gave people a shared belief system, a common identity, predictable continuity. Yes, it was based on beliefs we now know are false, but it worked for its time and place. It gave people meaning, purpose, structure. And isn't that what all civilizations need? Shared beliefs. Even if they're fictions, common purpose. Even if it's arbitrary, structure and continuity. Even if they're restrictive. Egypt had these things, maintained them, and thrived as a result. The pharaohs were key to maintaining these shared fictions. They performed divinity so convincingly that people believed. They maintained rituals so consistently that people relied on them. They embodied continuity so completely that people trusted in Egypt's eternal nature. This is why the pharaohs spent so much time on ceremony and ritual. It wasn't just empty performance. It was the glue holding civilization together. As long as the pharaoh did his daily rituals, people believed Ma'at was maintained. As long as he looked and acted divine, people believed in divine kingship. Break that illusion and everything collapses. This is what happened during the intermediate periods, when weak pharaohs or no pharaohs meant chaos and fragmentation. People lost faith in the system. Without that faith, the system couldn't function, so the pharaohs had to maintain the performance, no matter what. Even if they were sick, exhausted, doubtful, the show must go on. The rituals must be performed. The divine mask must never slip. It was exhausting, but necessary. This is why we should perhaps feel sympathy for the pharaohs. Despite their power and privilege, they were trapped in their roles as surely as any slave. They couldn't escape, couldn't just quit and live normal lives. From birth to death, they were pharaohs, with all that entailed. Some modern monarchs abdicate when the burden becomes too much. The pharaohs couldn't. There was no retirement from divinity. You were pharaoh until death. And death was just a transition to another divine role in the afterlife. No escape. Ever living under that kind of pressure. Maintaining that kind of performance. Year after year. Decade after decade. It's no wonder some pharaohs behaved strangely. Pushed boundaries. Tried to change things. The role was suffocating. Some must have craved any opportunity to assert individuality, to be human rather than divine. Akhenaten's religious revolution might have been partly this, a chance to remake the world, to create something new, to escape the crushing weight of tradition. Of course, it failed. The system was too strong, too entrenched. After his death, everything reverted, but the attempt reveals the human underneath the divine mask. A person who wanted change, who chafed against restriction, who dreamed of something different. That person was crushed by the system, forgotten, erased from history. But for a brief time, he tried. That's inspiring. In a way, even in the most restrictive system, even bearing the weight of divinity and cosmic responsibility. Individuals still try to assert themselves. The human spirit resists total suppression. People find ways to express individuality, to make choices, to matter as individuals rather than just role players. The pharaohs remind us of this. Yes, they were products of their system, shaped by their culture, constrained by their roles. But they were also individuals who made choices, left personal marks, expressed themselves within and sometimes against their constraints. This balance between individual and system, between person and role, between agency and structure, that's the eternal human challenge. We're all part of systems, playing roles, meeting expectations, but we're also individuals with unique thoughts, feelings, desires, finding the balance, maintaining sanity, living authentically while playing necessary roles. That's what we all struggle with. The pharaohs struggled with it too. On a massive scale, their struggle was more extreme, more consequential, more documented, but fundamentally, it was the same struggle we all face. And maybe that's why they still fascinate us. Not because they're alien god kings from an incomprehensible past, but because they're humans like us, facing universal human challenges, just in more extreme circumstances. We can relate to their struggles even if we can't relate to their circumstances. The pressure of expectations, the burden of responsibility, the desire for meaning and immortality, the fear of death and irrelevance, the struggle to balance duty and desire. These are universal human experiences. The pharaohs felt them too, amplified by their impossible roles. When we study the pharaohs, we're not just learning about ancient Egypt. We're learning about ourselves, about human nature, human psychology, human civilization, about what we are capable of, for good and ill, about how we create meaning, establish order, pursue immortality. The pharaohs are mirrors, reflecting our own hopes and fears, strengths and weaknesses. They show us what humanity can achieve when organized toward common purpose. They also show us the cost of such achievement, the sacrifices required, the inequalities created. They remind us that civilization is always a mixed blessing. It provides security, meaning, identity, but it also demands conformity, sacrifice, submission. The pharaohs embodied this paradox perfectly. They were the most powerful people in their civilization and the most constrained. As we close this journey through the lives of the pharaohs, take a moment to reflect. What have we learned about them, about Egypt, about civilization, about ourselves? What will you carry away from these stories of power and obsession? Achievement and tragedy? The pharaohs wanted to be remembered as gods. We remember them as humans, flawed, fascinating humans who lived in extraordinary circumstances and left extraordinary legacies. They aren't role models, exactly, but they're reminders of what humans can do when we commit fully to something, even something impossible. They built civilizations that lasted millennia. They created art that still moves us. They developed ideas that influenced all subsequent history. Yes, they also did terrible things, enslaved people, waged wars, practiced human sacrifice. They were products of their time, operating in a moral framework completely different from ours. We can acknowledge their achievements without endorsing their methods. We can learn from their successes and their failures. We can appreciate their legacy while recognizing its problematic aspects. History is complicated. The pharaohs are complicated. And that's okay. What matters is that we keep studying, keep learning, keep trying to understand. The pharaohs left us an incredible gift. 3,000 years of documented history, preserved in stone and papyrus and buried treasure. They wanted to be remembered, and their wish was granted beyond anything they imagined. Now it's our responsibility to remember them accurately, to understand them contextually, to learn from them wisely, not to worship them as gods or dismiss them as tyrants, but to see them as complex humans navigating impossible situations, creating a civilization that shaped the world. As you drift off to sleep tonight, let your mind wander through the world we've explored. Picture the white limestone palaces, the golden thrones, the painted tomb walls. Imagine the ceremonies, the rituals, the daily performance of divinity. Feel the weight of the crown, the burden of maintaining cosmic order, and appreciate that you don't have to carry that burden. You can sleep peacefully, free from the responsibility of maintaining the universe. That's a gift the pharaohs never had. Even in sleep, their dreams were filled with divine messages and cosmic significance. So sleep well, knowing you're free, free to be human, imperfect, mortal, free to dream ordinary dreams, free from the crushing weight of divinity. The pharaohs pursued immortality and achieved it, but the price was their humanity. They became symbols, icons, myths. The people they actually were got lost in the process. You get to be a person, not a symbol. You get to live a human life, not a divine performance. You get to die an ordinary death, not a cosmic transition. And maybe that's better. Maybe the pharaohs, if they could speak from beyond death, would envy you. Thank you for joining me on this journey through ancient Egypt. Thank you for listening to these stories of power and obsession, achievement and tragedy. Thank you for exploring the disturbing, fascinating world of the pharaohs. If you found value in this journey, consider subscribing to Sleepy Law Library. We explore history's darkest corners and strangest stories, always seeking the human truth beneath the myths and legends. Because every civilization, no matter how alien, was built by humans, and humans, fundamentally, are all the same. Until next time, sleep peacefully, dream sweet dreams, and remember, the pharaohs built for eternity, but you get to live for today. That's a gift beyond price, a treasure greater than all the gold in Tutankhamun's tomb. The pharaohs sleep in their tombs, wrapped in linen, surrounded by faded treasures. You sleep in comfort, free and human. Who really won? Perhaps you did. Perhaps we all did, by being born into a time when we can be ourselves. Live freely, die peacefully. Good night. The pharaohs are gone, but their stories remain, whispered through the ages, carried on desert winds, preserved in stone and memory. Sleep well, knowing you're part of that great chain of humanity, connected to everyone who came before, including those god-kings who ruled the Nile 3,000 years ago. Sweet dreams from Sleepy Law Library. Until we meet again,